Hello, this is Brett Wild, and we're going to be trying something a little different today. I know I always say that, don't I? This is the Eclipse 550. It's freeware. I downloaded it from the X-Plane website. I'll put a link down at the bottom of my underneath the video so that you can find it. And I was a little surprised. It's not a bad looking airplane for one that you're not paying for. Granted, it's not it doesn't have the detail of a Coronado or a Jar aircraft, but the outside is particularly well done. Climbing into the interior, it looks good. Not quite as photorealistic as some of the payware aircraft that we're used to. And looking around the cabin, it's nicely done. So I thought we would take a flight that was inspired by my friend Tom from Midway up to Rockford. So this is Midway is an airport southwest of downtown Chicago, and we're going to fly out to Rockford. It's just about a half-hour flight tops. Rockford is west of Chicago, and I'm going to be using the FMC that's in this airplane, and this is just the default off-the-shelf FMC that comes with X-Plane. And you'll kind of be exploring the features of the airplane along with me. I'm not an expert. I've only been out in this airplane twice, and not one of any great distance. So we'll tackle this together. So before we get things cranked up, let's take a little trip over to Sky Vector to see just how we're going to get there. So I've plotted out my flight plan. The winds are out of the southwest, so we're going to be taking off in that direction, and I've picked out a couple of waypoints here. There are two SIDs for Chicago Midway, and neither one of them give any explicit instructions. Probably you're going to be just filing it the way you want. So I've put in a Bojack down to Joliet just so I can get out of the airspace here around Chicago, because there are limitations, and I'll probably be breaking them anyway. So after we get to the Joliet VOR, we'll head up to these various waypoints, and then I'm positioning myself for the ILS approach into Rockford, and the winds are out of the northwest, so we'll be landing to the north, and the closest runway I could come up with was 01. So you can see Russell down here, and it lines up with, let me move this over a little bit. You can see Russell here, and then you can see Kenny, and that's right here. You can see it reflected over in my my text box here that contains my route. And then once we get there, we'll just dial in the localizer and fly our ILS approach. Alright, it's time to get this route into a .fms file for X-Plane. So I'm going to click Navlog to generate my waypoints and coordinates. However, I want to make sure that altitude is 0, otherwise I'm going to get a top of climb and top of descent, which I really don't want. I would rather put that in manually, and you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to click on Navlog, By the way, I'm doing this in Chrome. Firefox doesn't work, and Safari is a little bit dicey. So I've cut those now to my clipboard, and I'm going over to a beta version of X-Plane Tools. And I'm going to start by putting in my file name here, Midway, to Rockford. I'll paste in my waypoints. So starting here in Midway, and then I'm going to put in an altitude. So I do that in front of the first pair, represented here by Bojack. So I did a little thinking about this at a climb rate of about 3,400 feet a minute. We can definitely get to 5,000 feet. In fact, maybe I'll change that to, let's say we could probably get to 7,000 or 8,000. And then this will be Joliet. And I'm going to put in 12,000 there. And we'll keep it at 12,000. By the way, the only tricky part is that you know which one of these are represented here. So that's the tricky part. Again, it's a little dicey. So we can begin our descent now. Maybe 8,000. And our chart has us at 2,400 here. Yeah, this one's probably, I doubt we could get to that altitude fast enough. So let's begin our descent a little earlier. Let's see how that works. So sky vector, xplane.fms, and I'll go ahead and convert that. And then I'm going to save that link over to X-Plane, down to output, FMS plans. And now we're ready to head over to the airplane. Alright, we're back in the airplane and we want to get this started. Take it off pause here. So we'll start with our batteries. You'll notice that there's no condition levers or anything here to mess with. There's no APU, at least in this airplane, that I can find. So it's just a matter of getting it started. We'll just flip on our beacon. And maybe a nav light. Two start switches are here. And you can see our ITT, I don't know what that means, come up. I don't see N1 yet. Yeah, it looks like it's going back down again. Let's try that again. By the way, I've found these switches kind of dicey. That's not a very good excuse, is it? Maybe I need to hold that. Okay, now it's in the middle. So let's see what happens. Alright, this looks a lot better. Alright, so let's try this one. And these switches are real temperamental. So I'm just going to hold that. Let go. So it looks like it's at the 12 o'clock position. And all this is looking grand. And we'll go ahead and turn on our generators and our avionics. By the way, this is the old Garmin, not the new one that came with X-Plane 10, so it's really funky. I'm not even going to bother with it. But everything else is what you're used to in this type of airplane, although this is a nicely laid out glass cockpit. Getting some reflections here. And our map is, you can change what you're seeing by just clicking these boxes here. Don't need airports. And here's where you select the source. And you can go back and forth to a full map, plus or minus all your instruments. So I guess the last thing to do is get this fired up. Let's see if we can find our flight plan here. Do page to... Oh no, I'm sorry. To page. That is my base airport. Here we go. Sorry that took so long. So our first fix is at Bojack at 8,000 feet. And you can see our route. Made it in there. So now it's just a matter of getting out to the runway. Put in a notch of flaps that's indicated over here. We're now at takeoff. And if you look at the map, let's see, local map. We're here at General Aviation, and we're going to taxi all the way over to 22 left or right. So I will not bore you with that, except for just this initial taxi. Put on my taxi light. Some decent scenery. I can't remember which package this is, but you can see we're getting some of the exhaust fumes here. Got the logo light on. And now a lot of taxiing. So I will be back with you in just a moment. Alright, here we are at the end of runway 22 right. One thing I noticed in taxiing over here is that the brakes are a little dicey. I can activate this with my B key, but there's no way to manually control that. So I blew right through the my runway. I had to come back around. So hopefully we're in better shape now. So I've got flaps, and you can see that my route has been nicely plotted here. So I can switch to that once we get off the ground, but I want to be watching our engine instruments and go ahead and turn on our landing lights. Don't need our taxi lights anymore. Turn on our strobes. Nice strobes. So here we go. By the way, my toga switch worked fine. There we go. We'll go ahead and rotate. Gear up. Nice and smooth. Chicago in the background there. Flaps up. So let's go ahead and click our source here. Whoops. Oh, this button here. GPS. And engage our autopilot here. And our RNAV, which activates vertical speed. And then our navigate button. And any of you who have used the X-Plane VNav knows that it will adjust its rate of climb to get you to the altitude at the same time you get to the waypoint, which is kind of cool. So our fix is Bojack. See if there's any indication of that here. Well, there's one down here on the old Garmin. Our altitude has been dialed in at 8,000. And we're coming up on our first waypoint. I wish there was some indication besides here. I flip over to the map. Yep, next, Bojack. Very nice. By the way, I did see a button here for a checklist. Ah. Always use a checklist, right? Alright. Coming up on Bojack. I think we're going to be a little bit short, but we've got 1 nautical mile to get to 8,000, but yeah, our rate of climb is, well, it's really hard. Oh, that's down here, 1,700. I'm not sure why we're not getting the 3,400 that was advertised. So hopefully we'll get to, well, maybe, let's check my power. Yeah, I'm at full power. So I'm not sure why we're not getting a little bit better altitude. Part of all of this is to check the altitudes that I've entered in the X-Plane Tools converter. So I don't want to cheat by, I don't know, maybe this will increase it. Get a little better, but I think by the time we get to Joliet we'll be at 12,000. We've got 8 miles. So I'm going to just leave it. By the way, this is SkyMax Pro 4. Relatively recent. Clouds look great when you're in them. They're still a little too much like cotton balls when you're above or below. Look out the window. This is what our passenger is seen on the left side. And I got one set for this side. And it shows us over Joliet. Still not to 12,000 yet. Maybe somebody can shed a little bit of light on why I'm not. If I need to do anything to get my rate of speed up. I thought it would do it automatically. Maybe I'm just used to the more sophisticated X737 and the JAR 320. So I'm at cruise. It does not plot everything. Wow. Not sure how to zoom in. Down here. This is 40 miles, but I'm not sure exactly how to get that. Looks like they're supposed to be able to punch these, but I'm not seeing that. Don't want to change my flight level. Engine lock. These don't seem to do anything as well. Ah, there we go. There's our range. And we're Schmidt is our next waypoint. So you can see Sim up here, which I think is next. Probably don't need full power. One nice thing about the more sophisticated FMCs, FMSs, in like the Boeing and Airbuses is that even if you turn this off, it will still show the waypoints in your flight plan. Wonder if this needs this. Ah, there you go. They do display certain things. Okay. Oh, that's nice. Sorry to be discovering this along with you, but should have read the manual. I'm doing kind of the millennial thing here and just kind of clicking around and seeing what happens. Yeah, actually that's kind of delightful. Shows our flight or our control surfaces. Yeah, I like that. All right, all good stuff. Very good. But I also get that up here. And our next one is Hink, which is right here in the center. And after that, let's see what's next. Okay, we start down at Sim. And I hope that's radical enough. It might not be. Let me reduce that a little bit. Maybe 6,000. Whoops. Yeah. So the nose is coming down, come back on our power. Need to get down to 250 knots below 10,000 feet. And I'm wondering if there is a descent. Huh. Just click the screen here. Descent. No. Nothing really to set here. Approach is 120 knots. Final airspeed 95. Good to know. By the way, we're getting reflections here. One thing about the Coronado aircraft, you can turn those off, but it doesn't seem to affect our frame rates. I'm getting between 28 and 30. Go over to our FMS. Oops. 2 miles to sim. So our VNAV worked just fine at that point. I wonder, in order to get back, if I have to turn this off. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that'll be helpful. All right, back with you in just a minute. All right, continuing our descent. I've got Russell set for 4,000 feet, and it looks like we're going to hit that. And I want to come back a little bit more on my speed, so you can see our route here. So this is our ILS approach right here. So we do need to set our frequency, and that you do with the Garmin. Yeah, so let's see if I can't get this figured out. This is the old Garmin. There we go. It's 1093. So that is set. I'm going to go to VLOC, and I'm going to go to approach. And you can see our bugs here. Here's our guide slope, and here's our localizer. So we are still a little bit to the east of that. And we want to be at 2,400 feet at Kenny. So actually, right now, yeah, Kenny, that's a lot of checkpoints here. But as long as we are below this, you can see it's starting to swing down now. Our localizer is still to our left. 160 is our approach. All right. Turning towards the airport. Our localizer's coming by. It's anticipating that. Lovely. Speed is dropping because we've leveled out a little bit. So now it's just a matter of capturing our guide slope. Got this dialed down to 10 miles. Still waiting for that guide slope. And we're 7 miles out. I'm going to go ahead and put the gear down. Notch of flaps. Now the PAPI lights are showing us low. Still curious about that. Alright, looks like our guide slope is starting to slide down here. So our final approach is 120. And we come over the fence about 95. Alright, guide slope. There we go. You can see that in our FMA that we've got localizer and guide slope both engaged. And let's put down, well, I'll wait for that final notch of flaps. We're supposed to be at 120 about now.
1000.
I like the call out. Again, not a bad looking aircraft. Notice the cotton balls. Not terrible. Certainly a lot better than X-Plane. Although I'll be curious to see what they look like in 11. Alright, final notch of flaps. Not much out here in Rockford. And we're right on the guide slope.
400.
Speed dropping. We want 95 over the fence. So I'm still on autopilot. PAPI lights, 2 white, 2 red. We're good.
100.
Alright, that's good enough. Back on the power, off on the autopilot.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Alright, a little bit of a float there. No reverse. Power all the way down. and brake engaged. Alright, brake off, and not sure where to put this thing. We'll just head over to that hangar. Not sure where general aviation is, but that looks close enough. There is a terminal. Whoops. Pay attention. Lights work nicely. Wait for clearance to go across, and while we're doing that, alright, we've been cleared. We can turn off our lights here, strobe lights. Put up our flaps. Get the aircraft cleaned up. Well, this aircraft flies very nicely, handles well, taxis well. I really have no complaints other than the modeling just isn't as slick as it is in some of the payware airplanes, which is completely understandable. And this looks like a good place to stop. See if I can get these turned off. I had a problem with these yesterday because it wants to go the opposite direction. There you go, you just kind of click it. Alright, so engines should be shutting down. Power is all the way back. We can turn off our generators now. Don't need the avionics. And there is a door. Wish you could activate it from the outside. So, here we are in Rockford. And let's just call it a day. Thanks for watching.